Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As you've already heard, my name is Max Moyo. I'm an author, I'm a leadership catalyst, and a teacher of simple, universal, and timeless principles of human effectiveness. I am so excited to kick off your leadership get together. I would have loved to be there in person, but this will have to do. This will have to do. All right, our topic for this morning: leading in turbulent times, or as I like to call it, leading in times of crisis and change. What an exciting time to be alive for a leader. For the real leaders should be excited because we live in a world where everything is changing, and it's changing so fast that sometimes we can't keep up. Man, things are changing so much that even change itself is changing. What a time to be a leader. And so to begin our conversation, I thought we should begin by perhaps defining what leadership is. Because if we're going to talk about leading in turbulent times, it's important that we're talking about the same things. Because if I were to ask everybody in this room today what leadership is, we're going to have different answers. And so I'm going to try and get us onto a common leadership platform. And then from there, we'll see how we're going to deal with the challenges of leadership. The first thing to note when we start thinking about leadership is the fact that leadership and turbulence go together. Forget all the turbulences that I've actually mentioned. Your number one job as a leader is actually to cause turbulence. So what happens? What is turbulence? Turbulence is that air is flowing nicely and we're cruising along, and suddenly you hit rough air and everything goes into turbulence. Well, let's look at leadership. Leadership is taking people from where they are, comfort zone, and moving them to where they should be, discomfort. And that by its very nature is creating turbulence. And may I say that any leadership that does not cause turbulence is not effective leadership. And so we see from that, just that definition of mine, that leadership causes turbulence, we discover something that's very interesting. The moment you accepted the call to lead, you accepted a life of change. To lead is to accept a call for a life of change. We as leaders are in a race that doesn't end. I know some of us have had that, you wake up in the morning and you think, man, I wish I could have a normal day at the office. Well, I got news for you. There is no such a thing as a normal day at the office for a leader. We're in a race that doesn't have a finish line. And so if we're in a race that doesn't have a finish line, the question then becomes, how then do we deal with this ever-changing environment that we live in? There are two key questions that I have learned to apply when you live in changing environments. Two key questions that every leader must ask when you are faced with turbulence and crisis and change. The first question to ask whenever you are in a transition, whenever you are moving from the familiar to the unfamiliar, when you're moving from the known to the unknown, first question, and you're going to see that there is more work to be done in you before you are able to impact outside of yourself. So the first internal question to ask yourself as a leader when faced with turbulence is, who do I need to be now that I've never been before? Who do I need to be now that I've never been before? And so you realize that actually turbulence calls for us as leaders to go through transformation. We must transform, because before we can transform our organizations, before we can transform our environment. So first question is, what changes need to take place within me so that I'm able to tackle and deal with the turbulence in front of me? That's the first question. Second question then says, now that I've done the changes, what will I need to do now that I've never done before? So, who do I need to be now that I've never been before? Followed by the second question, what will I need to do now that I've never done before? And so in your discussions after this, that's the two most critical questions you're going to have to ask each other. Who do we need to be now as a leadership team? And what do we need to do now as a leadership team? And of course, at the end of the day is then, who do our people need to be? And what do our people need to do? That's how you deal with turbulence. All right, these are exciting times. So I'm quite excited. I know we are going to have an exciting time. The second thing to note as we deal with the question of turbulence, the second thing to note, once again, at a personal level, you as the leader must be very clear in your head that a crisis comes to give credibility to you as a leader. Every crisis is an opportunity to give you credibility. Because you see, when everything is going well, everybody claims to be a leader. But real and true leaders are forged out of crisis. They are forged out of turbulence. Turbulence reveals the leader. And so do not be afraid of turbulence. Rather, look at it as an opportunity for you to emerge, as an opportunity for you to grow and become a better leader. And so keep that in mind. A crisis comes to give credibility in your life. It does not come to conclude your life. The reason a lot of us as leaders fail to deal with turbulence and crisis is because we personalize it. Because the moment you think this is going to conclude your life, you've already failed as a leader. So get that in your mind as you deal with this. Every crisis, every turbulence is an opportunity to give credibility to you as a leader. All right. Now, the next thing that I want us to lead up to is how do we define leadership? How do we define leadership? Maybe before we define leadership, we need to take a step back and say this, that if you're going to be successful as a leader, or if you want to be a successful leader, the first thing you're going to have to do is to stop pursuing success. Well, that sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? If you're going to be a great leader, one of the things that you're going to have to do is to stop pursuing success. Everybody who's ever pursued success have discovered this one thing. Success is always ahead of you. And so I've discovered that instead of pursuing success, what you should do is do something that will cause success to pursue you. And so the first thing that I'm going to challenge you this morning is seek to become a person of value. If you're going to be a great leader and you're going to be a leader who's going to be able to deal with turbulence, you must focus on becoming a person of value. I've often said over and over and over again that leadership is an inside job. You've got to work on yourself so that you have the capacity to impact your environment. Seek to become a person of value. And of course, the question then people ask me would be, okay, Max, how then do I become a person of value? Well, this is very simple. Value is determined by you refining your uniqueness. And so the first recognition here is that you must recognize that you're a unique individual who brings a unique set of capabilities to the table. Very important. So value is determined by refining your own uniqueness. And then refined uniqueness leads you to becoming significant. When you refine your uniqueness, you become significant. Why is such an what is significance? Simply put, significance is the capacity to walk into a room and literally shift the atmosphere. Think about it. Major focus as a leader is to shift. We shift the environment. We shift human beings. We shift organizations. We shift industries. And you cannot do the shifting work until you become significant as a person. And one of my favorite human beings when it comes to significance is the late Nelson Mandela. When I met Nelson Mandela in 1997, he was hosting the late Robert Mugabe and Joaquim Chissano of Mozambique. And I got to describe this for you. Now, typically, when you go to these political gatherings, where the president is addressing, there's a podium up front and there's a door on the side next to the podium. So the presidents walk through the side door. On this particular day, it was very interesting because first of all, the president of Mozambique walked in, then the president of Zimbabwe walked in, and we waited for President Mandela to walk in. And guess what? He didn't walk in through the side door next to the podium. Instead, he walked in from the back. Here's what's interesting. They did not announce him. When he walked in, you could feel the room change. You could feel the environment shifting. That, my friends, is significant. And we all know people like that. They walk into a room and there's a shift in that environment. Great leadership does exactly that. You work on yourself until you get to a point where when you walk into a room, you walk into a meeting, there is a shift in the atmosphere. So the problem that we have is that we're trying to shift atmospheres when we haven't shifted on the inside. And so the question then becomes, okay, Max, I get you. Now, what is this uniqueness that I must refine? Now we get to the meat and the bones. First of all, there are 8 billion people on planet Earth today, and yet not a single individual like you. Right now, where you are sitting right now, listening to me, you are 1 in 8 billion. A unique phenomenon, never ever to be repeated again. Take note, there has never been a human being like you before you. There is no one like you as we speak. And when you die, there will never ever be another human being like you again. So you, my friend, are it. In my time, MC Hammer would have said, can't touch this. I mean, if you woke up this morning, looked in the mirror and thought to yourself, can't touch this. This is such a critical thing to understand. You are so unique and so rare. Your parents should have patented you. Thou shalt not come. Our greatness as human beings, our greatness as leaders, starts with the recognition of our uniqueness. So what makes us 1 in 8 billion? Or what I call in one of my books, the 8th wonder of this world. There are 7 natural wonders we all know about, Victoria Falls being one of them. But every time you look in the mirror, my friend, you come face to face with the 8th wonder of the world. What makes you that unique? Well, number 1, and so that happens to be the first step in our definition of leadership. Number 1, you were born with a unique identity. Once I say identity, some will say I'm African, others say I'm European, others will say I'm Afrikaner, some say I'm Tswana, some say I'm Sutu. No, that's what I'm talking about. Identity has nothing to do with nationality. It has nothing to do with your tribe. It has nothing to do with your gender. It has nothing to do with your religious affiliation. Identity, if you remember, the shortcut for identity is ID. And in my book, It's One of the World, I talk about this. ID stands for irresistible difference. Oh, stay with me. What do I mean by you were born with a unique capacity to be the difference? Every single human being is born with a unique capacity to be the difference. And so leadership for you begins the day you recognize what is this identity or irresistible difference that you bring. Let me give you a practical example. A practical example is that in your homes, at home, you have a family member who's a peacemaker. Now, the peacemaker in your family didn't go to Stellenbosch University to study conflict resolution. And yet, whenever there's conflict in the family, indeed, even in the community, they get called upon to bring about peace. So what we discover now is that that peacemaker in your family was born with a unique identity or irresistible difference of bringing about peace. So wherever they go, where there's conflict, they bring peace. So my fellow leader, what is your unique identity? What is your unique, irresistible difference? Why is that so important? Because when you know what you bring to the table, you also know what you don't bring to the table. And automatically recognizing and embracing your unique identity automatically helps you to do what? To look for others who are gifted in areas that you're not. Because you suddenly discover you can't do it on your own. You need a team. Together, each achieves more. And to be an effective team leader, a team member, there are two things you need to have. Number one, recognize your unique identity or irresistible difference. Number two, recognize what you don't have. Number three, connect to people who have what you don't have. All right. So the first step in leadership is your identity, embracing your unique identity. The second one is talents. There are no two people with the same talents in the same proportion. So you possess a set, besides your unique identity, you possess a set of talents that no one else out of the 8 billion people on the planet possesses. So logic says, should you harness your unique talents, develop your unique talents, deploy your unique talents, then there's something in this world that only you can do better than anyone else. And if you're the only person who can do what you can do like you can do, then the world will pay top dollar for what you can do. What are your unique talents? Once again, recognizing your talents also means recognizing where you are not talented. And so it leads you once again to what? To building a team, looking for people who are talented in areas that you're not talented. So for me, the logic of it is that team is something that should happen almost automatically by individuals recognizing that I'm incomplete on my own. I need people that are gifted in areas that I'm not gifted. I need people that are talented in areas that I'm not talented. And when we bring this together, we form a strong leadership team. We form a strong organization. The third step on our leadership journey becomes purpose. Purpose. Every single one of us was born for a unique purpose. That's why we are born with a unique identity, a unique, irresistible difference. That's why we have a unique set of talents, because these two are given to us so that we can achieve a unique purpose. What is your purpose, my fellow leader? Why are you here? Why are you alive now? Why were you not born in the 80s? Let me tell you why. Because what you carry would have been useless in the 80s. You are here today because you carry something that is a solution to the problems that the world is facing today. You're not just here to drink beer and die. You are here to fulfill a purpose that's larger than yourself. And I'd like to think that in the organization that you work for, you understand that. I'm not just a leader because they're recognizing me for what I can bring. I'm a leader because I understand the purpose of this organization and I live for the purpose. One of the biggest challenges that we face in organizations is purposeless individuals becoming leaders of a purposeful organization. That's how we see these educated guys who come and run perfectly successful companies and run them down. These guys are educated, but they are purposeless. And because they are purposeless, they have no appreciation of the purpose of the organization that they run. Turbulence is interesting, my friends, because you see, turbulence, you can only face turbulence when you are driven by purpose. So step 1, embrace unique identity. Step 2, harness, develop, and deploy unique talents. Step 3, in pursuit of a life of purpose. Step number 4, your purpose then is what generates your conviction about life. Leaders, my friends, are men and women of great conviction. They are driven by something larger than life itself. There's nothing more frustrating than a leader who has no conviction, who's blown by the wind from pillar to post. We need men and women of great conviction. And when you're faced with turbulence, what you need is a leader of great conviction. It was Winston Churchill who put it beautifully for me. He said, give me one man with conviction. Why, Winston Churchill? Because one man with conviction will overwhelm 100 who only have opinions. I'm afraid these days we have a lot of leaders who have no conviction, who just merely have opinions. It's nothing more dangerous than people of opinion who have no conviction. Conviction will make you stand at the face of danger, to stand on principle. It is conviction that helps you to stand for what is right. It is conviction that gives you integrity when we have leadership that lacks integrity. How are you going to face turbulence when you have no conviction? Listen to the words of a leader of great conviction. It was Nelson Mandela facing a judge with a possibility of a death penalty. And so the judge says to Mandela, Nelson, I have heard from the defense and I've heard from the prosecution. What do you have to say for yourself in mitigation? And Nelson Mandela looks the judge in the face and he says, Your Honor, like you, I want to live. However, I am so convicted. Listen to what he says. This is an ideal that I hope to live for. And if necessary, to die for. My fellow leader, what are you willing to live for? And if necessary, die. The turbulence of life in a leadership role, the turbulence that we face, sometimes it does feel like life and death itself. It is hard to make some of the decisions that we have to make as leaders. And if you're a man or a woman who lacks conviction, you're not going to take the decisions that are necessary to get out of turbulence. And so when we have leaders who have no conviction, we're about to crash our plane. So this morning I'm asking you, before you enter your leadership discussions, what is your conviction? What is your conviction? I am convicted that every man, woman, and child is born unique. And so I've made it my life's work to do what? To help people recognize that they were born unique. And so I have a special vision for myself, which I always share, and this is my vision. I have a vision of a world of over 8 billion people who embrace their unique identity. They harness, they develop, and they deploy their unique talents in pursuit of a life of purpose. When that is done, then my purpose on earth is done, and I can die in peace. This is my conviction. What is your conviction? Step number, your conviction, my friends, is what then generates your vision. Many times I ask leaders in my talks, how many of you have got a personal vision? And I'm shocked at how many leaders don't have a personal vision. And the question that's always on my mind is, how can you be a custodian of the vision of your organization when you yourself do not have a vision? Let me just show you vision in action. So when I was approached and they asked me if I would come and address you before your leadership session, I didn't ask the person, how much money are you going to pay me? You know what I asked? I asked myself, is addressing you this morning going to move me closer to achieve my vision? Remember, I just shared my vision. I have a vision of a world of over 8 billion people who embrace their unique identity, who harness, develop, and deploy their unique talents in pursuit of their purpose. Does addressing you this morning lead me closer to that vision? Yes, it does. And so I make a decision. Yes, I'm going to come and talk at your session. You see, vision becomes the thing that determines what you do with your limited 24 hours in a day. We've only got 24 hours. And you have to prioritize your life. And the only way to prioritize your life is based on your vision. What do you intend to achieve? And so if you're listening to me this morning and you don't have a personal vision, I'm going to ask you and I challenge you. First of all, grab onto the vision of the organization for which you're a leader. And meanwhile, try and figure out what your vision is. Visionless people The good book says, where there's no vision, the people perish. And where there's no vision, organizations perish. What is your vision? See, it's easy to look at the turbulence that's coming towards us. But if we don't do the internal work that we need to do as the leader, you can't face the turbulence, let alone lead your team and your organizations through the turbulence. First thing, embrace unique identity. Number 2, harness, develop, and deploy your unique talents. Number 3, in pursuit of a life of purpose. Number 4, your purpose generates your conviction. Number 5, your conviction generates your vision for life. Why do we need to be men and women of vision? Because it is your vision, not your salary. It is your vision, not your share options. It is your vision, not your big offices. It is your vision, not your title, that generates the passion with which you do what you do. Great leaders are men and women of passion. They are driven by something within them that's larger than life. You see it in the way they walk. You see it in the urgency with which they do what they do. They are men and women of passion. When you don't have a vision, you live it. And here's this interesting thing about passion. Passion is interesting because you look at anybody you look up to. The thing that attracts you to those people is their passion. Passion. So often I walk into organizations and I watch how people walk. And I can see organizations where the vision is really lived. They walk with a spring in their step. They're focused. They know what they're about. And you get to places where vision is not important. And you can see the way people drag their feet. Customer service is slack. Sales are slack. Everything is slack. Because where there is no vision, there is no passion. If your people are dragging their feet around, that's because you have not communicated the vision in such a way that they buy it. You have to communicate that vision until people can feel it, until people can smell it, until people can touch it. That is great leadership. And so your passion as a leader, leads us into step number 7, inspiration. It is your passion as a leader that inspires the people to follow you. It is your passion that causes people to follow you. People don't follow you because they report to you. People don't follow you because you're the CEO. People don't follow you because you're the director. People follow you because you're a man or a woman of passion. They're inspired by your passion. They want to be within the same environment with you because your passion fires them up. They will go to war with you. Men will go to war with you. Women will go to war with you when you're a leader of great passion because you inspire your people. Man, I am fascinated because, I'm a lover of history. And Winston Churchill talks about this. Now, the finest hour, he says, when he walked into a minister of the United Kingdom in the midst of World War II, he says, I felt as if everything I've ever been through was preparing me for this moment. I felt like this is my finest hour. Can I challenge you, my leadership team now? Can I challenge you? The turbulence you are faced with right now could become your finest hour. I repeat that. The turbulence you are faced with right now could become your finest hour. So you look at it with excitement. Great leaders. Understand we're not just here by chance. We're here because the challenges that this organization is facing right now requires what we have as a leadership team. Inspiration. When people are inspired by you, that means they're influenced by you. The final step in leadership, influence. And so we discover very quickly that leadership is nothing more than simply influence. When people give up their own rights to follow you, that's influence. And throughout history, we've seen where men and women have had so much influence that men and women have volunteered to go to their death for no money, just for the vision. And so that leads me now to my final, which is the definition there of leadership. How do we define leadership then? Now that I've given you the list, right? So what is leadership? So this is my definition of leadership, and you're going to find I find that this is the most, from my point of view anyway, the most accurate definition of leadership. You're not going to find it in any book. This is my definition of leadership. Leadership is the capacity to, one, influence others through, number two, inspiration, motivated by, number three, a passion, generated by, number four, a vision, produced by, number five, a conviction, ignited by, number six, a purpose, fulfilled by your unique talents, seven, manifested through your unique irresistible difference or identity. And so with that definition, you can go back and figure out where you are lacking in the leadership definition and focus on that area until you're complete. How are we feeling? Yes, that's leadership. How do you measure to that definition of leadership? How do you measure to the definition of leadership? And now that we have defined leadership and we have the same understanding of what leadership is, let's now give that leadership legs. We're now going to give our leadership legs. The first leg of leadership is leadership begins with a declaration of independence. You see, you can't lead if you're not independent. Leadership begins with a declaration of independence. Well, let's start first. Number one, you can never lead the people that you need. So the first step in leading is to declare independence from the people that you're going to lead. What does that mean? That means the people you are going to lead have no influence on how you are going to lead. Let me put it nicely. Let's assume, for instance, that you got into leadership because the union supported your candidacy for that role. And now you're a director in an organization, and then you have to make decisions, right? And the right decision says you should do A. But the people that put you in that position says to you, don't forget who put you in that role. Now, if you cannot decide what you believe is right because you're afraid of the people that you lead because they put you in that role, then you don't have independence. A declaration of independence means that I am independent from the people that I'm supposed to lead. I make independent decisions. We've all seen this where people make decisions, leaders make decisions, you're thinking, I know that guy. How did he make that decision? Well, welcome to a lack of independence. Sometimes we find ourselves in leadership roles and with bonds to pay and kids in private school. And the right decision says we should go left. But we have now stopped being leaders. We've become puppets. And there's a puppeteer somewhere who's pulling the strings. We're not leaders anymore. Leadership begins with a declaration of independence. A declaration of independence, also you must declare independence from your culture. Give you an example. If you are a black woman, for instance, who grew up in a typical African home, you would have been told that when men speak, women must keep quiet. So for you, when I say leadership begins with the declaration of independence, it means that you must declare independence from that way you were brought up. Because tomorrow you find yourself leading a group of men. And if you don't declare independence from the way you were brought up, you will not be able to succeed. It could be religion. And so what I believe is the greatest call to leadership is this: leave your place of birth, leave your country, leave your family, and go to a place I'll show you. Whenever you agree to the call of leadership, you have to declare independence from the way you were brought up. Why? Because the way we were brought up influences our decisions, how we see the world. Here's a typical classical example. Let's say, for instance, you grew up in a racist home. Because you see, all of us don't choose. No, none of us chose our parents. Now you're growing up in a home where it's racist or it's tribalist. And suddenly one day you wake up and you find yourself in leadership. You have to declare independence from the way they brought you up. And that's why in my book, The Leadership Call, I talk about this. I say, leadership begins the day you decide how you are going to live life going forward. And that's how, no, that's how I was brought up. No. When you decide for yourself. So here's a question that I have for you, my fellow leaders. What do you need to declare independence from? Because the thing that will make you sink in turbulent times is the things that you refuse to declare independence from. what do you need to declare independence from so your leadership can show up? So first thing, leadership begins the declaration of independence. What are the things that you need to declare independence from so that you can truly lead? What about religion, your belief system, your culture? All these things have influence on us. In fact, it's not the influence that they have, it's the biases that they come with. The second leg of leadership is what I call integrity. And this is one of the most underrated value, by the way, integrity. Doing what you say you will do by when you say you will do it. If you have no integrity, you've already failed as a leader because nobody's going to trust you. And if people don't trust you, they're not inspired by you and they are not influenced by you. We don't follow people we don't trust. We tolerate people we don't trust. Let me ask you something, my fellow leader. Your team, do they trust you? Are they inspired by you? Or do they tolerate you? Tolerate you, wondering, how did you get to that role? Integrity, changes everything. When your word means something. Your yes is yes, your no is no. Your 9 o'clock is 9 o'clock. Your tomorrow is tomorrow. That's integrity. Doing what you say you will do by when you say you'll do it. The moment you have no integrity, forget it. You're no longer a leader. You just hold a position. So we tolerate you because you have the title. In fact, we're not respecting you. We're respecting the chair. The third leg of leadership is one of my favorite, particularly in times of turbulence. And that's pain threshold. That's my favorite word when it comes to leadership. Pain threshold. Do you remember the first time you walked into leadership? What's the first thing that you recognized and realized? I'll tell you what I recognized. What surprised me when I walked into leadership was how much pain there is in leading. My 21-year-old boy last year was doing his final year, and he then became the leader of the group when they were doing their group project. And every time I'd phone him, he said, "Daddy, this leadership thing is hard, man. People don't do what they're supposed to do, and I'm working extra hours." And I said, "Welcome, Sonny." I said, "Welcome to leadership." And so he would share the pain he was going through. And I'd encourage him to take the pain. And I tell him, "Listen, man, this is only the beginning. If you intend to lead all your life, you better embrace pain." So let's look at pain threshold. Why pain threshold? You see, every leader will only grow to his or her pain threshold. You will only grow to your pain threshold. You can't go beyond your pain threshold. In other words, as a leader, you will only grow up to the pain that you are willing or are able to take, because leadership and pain are one thing. There is no leadership without pain. There is no leadership that doesn't cause pain. In fact, any leadership that does not cause pain is not effective leadership. So you, as a leader, will only grow to your pain threshold. That also means you are only able to deal with turbulence that's up to your pain threshold. So if we're looking at aeroplanes, we kind of say, well, a little two-seater can only take this much of turbulence. This is what maybe a Boeing 747 can take. You get the point. So what is your pain threshold? Take note once again, are you noticing that most of the leadership things that we need to deal with are all internally? You can't impact externally with what you don't have internally. What is your pain threshold? How much pain can you handle? Because sometimes the turbulence you're faced with is beyond your capacity. And you have to put your hand up and say, "Guys, this is too much for me." Because if you don't, you and the team are both going to crack. And so one of the challenges that we face in organizations is that we have a leadership team with a low pain threshold, and it's faced by high pain. And ultimately learn this, my fellow leaders. The organization that you lead, the department that you lead, the division that you lead, the team that you lead can only grow to the leader's pain threshold. Your team cannot achieve beyond what you as a leader can handle in terms of pain. And so sometimes the reason why our sales figures go down is that we've reached a stage where the leader or the leadership cannot handle the pain that it will take to move sales to the next level. And so some of the things that you're going to have to face today in your meeting is, do we have the necessary pain threshold to achieve the numbers that we have been targeted with? And if not, perhaps the big conversation today is about how do we raise our pain threshold as a leadership team before we can raise the pain threshold of those that we're leading. Leadership, my fellow leaders, is simply bleedership. I'm going to repeat that again. Leadership is bleedership. You are going to bleed if you choose to lead. And if you're not bleeding, then, my friend, I'm sorry, you're not leading. It's important for you as a leader to recognize that leadership is leadership. You know why? So that when you bleed, you don't bleed on your people. That's why we pay you more as a leader, because we recognize you're going to. One of my favorite statements is that leadership is brutiful. That's a combination of the word brutal and beautiful. Leadership is brutiful. I'm sharing this with you because I'm aware that right now you are faced with challenging times as a leadership team, and you're coming together to decide a way forward. How do we deal with the storm that we're faced with? How do we deal with the turbulence? And that's going to take a high pain threshold. Otherwise, you're just going to have another talk show and watch your organization head for the cliff. I have seen many an organization going to the cliff because the leaders would not take the pain. It's going to take pain to move your organization from where it is to where it needs to be. What pain are you willing to take? You said you want to be a leader. You're going to have to stand up. You're going to have to stand tall. You're going to have to refuse to bend in the face of turbulence and storms. And you're going to be tossed from pillar to post, but you're going to keep going knowing that the vision is still clear, that my commitment is still clear, and I'm going to take you as a team. Hold on, team. I will take you to where I promised to take you. Pain threshold. And so as a leader, you need to spend time raising your own pain threshold. Every turbulence is an opportunity to increase your pain threshold. Every crisis is an opportunity to increase your pain threshold. And so whatever you are faced with today as a leadership team, this is another opportunity to raise your pain threshold. And so turbulence then becomes our teacher, becomes the one thing that sharpens us, is needed by every leader. We need turbulence in order for us to grow. All right, let me wrap it up now. I'm going to round it off now for you. I'm sure you need a break now. You're going to have to think about all these things. It's quite heavy. So in closing then, I want to share with you my pain equation. My pain equation. And this is the equation that you're going to use as you make decisions around how you're going to deal with your turbulence, around what is the way forward. This becomes the formula that you use. Okay, number one, growth is equal to change. Growth is equal to change. Take note that every time you grow, you must change. And so whatever growth you are expecting from your organization is linked to the change. So the question then that you need to ask is, given the growth that we want, what is the change that needs to take place? At an individual level, the question becomes, what do I need to change in order for me as a leader to achieve our objectives? Or even better still, what do I need to change in order to be able to go through this turbulence or to navigate the turbulence? And there are three things that you normally look there. Number one, you need to change how you use your time. So what are the changes that you're going to make in terms of how you use your time? See, it becomes tangible. If you just said this is the change, doesn't help. No, changes are, if you don't change how you use your time, there's no change that's taking place. Number two, your thinking. You see, the thinking that got you to where you are today will not. So the thinking that worked when there was no turbulence will not work when there's turbulence. So what needs to change in terms of your thinking? And the third part, relationships. Relationships. So here's a simple example. You're a leader, you're going through turbulence. What do? Disconnect from fellow leaders who are going through turbulence. No, disconnect from people that are not going through turbulence. Let's get that. So you disconnect from people that are not going through turbulence. And then, 2, you connect to people that are going through turbulence. Number 3, you connect to people that have already gone through turbulence. Because your relationships matter when you're going through crisis. You get that? Okay. So the first part is growth is equals to change. The second part of the equation says change is equals to loss. So ask the question, whatever decisions that you guys come up with in your leadership session today, you got to ask the question, what do we as the leadership team, first, what do I as a leader need to lose in order for us to go through this turbulence and succeed? Then what do we as a collective leadership team need to lose in order to go through this turbulence? And then number 3, what does the organization, the people, need to lose in order for us to go through the turbulence? Once again, use of time, your thinking, and your relationship. The third part of the equation says, so if growth is equals to change and change is equals to loss, then loss at a deeper level is equals to pain. Now you see that. Loss is equals to pain. So every time you ask your people to change, you're asking them to take pain. Every time you make a decision to change, you're making the decision to go through pain. So here's the question now for that one. This is equals to pain. So the question becomes, what pain am I as a leader prepared to endure in order to navigate the storm? What pain am I prepared to endure in order to get the sales results I'm looking for? What pain am I prepared to endure in order to move my organization to the next level? And then as a collective, what pain are we as a leadership team prepared to endure in order to achieve the objectives that we're setting in this leadership meeting? And finally, what pain will our people have to endure for us to achieve the organizational objectives? Because one of the key things that you're going to have to do as a leader when you are done with your leadership conference is you now have to communicate to the people back home. And part of that communication is not just where we are going, it's also about the fact that it's going to cost us in terms of pain. Growth is equal to change. Change is equal to loss. Loss is equal to pain. Therefore, look at this equation. Growth is equal to pain. My fellow leaders, if you make your life about avoiding pain, you effectively make your life about avoiding growth. So pain cannot be avoided. In fact, let me put it this way, guys. What's interesting for me is that pain is neither negative or positive. We decide. Pain is just pain. That's what it's just pain. But if you look at your life right now, you're going to see that everything you have achieved in life has come through pain. So pain actually is your best friend. Pain becomes your best friend. Turbulence, that's pain. Economic downturn, that's pain. Political turmoil, that's pain. Climatic changes, that's pain. Tariffs, that's pain. We are faced with all sorts of pain and struggles, and it is part of it. But as leaders, we look forward to every challenge, knowing no pain, no gain. And so I want to challenge you as you go to the next day or two of deliberations to keep this at the back of your mind. Whatever decisions you take, it's going to take pain. Now, here's the fascinating thing as I close. One of the things that I find very interesting is that people think that they can avoid pain. I've got news for you. There is no life without pain. There is no leadership without pain. So we think we can avoid pain. All you do is choose another pain. And I learned this when I was looking after cattle in the village back in the day when I was growing up. One of the lessons that I learned is the difference between cows and buffalo. You see, as a young boy heading cattle back in Rhodesia, then now Zimbabwe, one of the things that I learned there is that when you're heading cattle, particularly during rain season, you know when there's a storm coming by the behavior of the cattle. Because cattle, once they sense a storm, and they will sense it before you do, when they sense a storm, they start walking towards home. But you see, the idea is that you keep cattle in the pasture until the evening. It's only in the evening that you now take them back home. But if at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you see cattle become restless and they're trying to head for home, you know there's a storm coming. And what the cattle are trying to do is that they are trying to avoid the pain of the storm. So they try and run away before the storm gets to them. All right? Now, that's very interesting. So initially, you kind of try and keep the cattle grazing, and after a while, they stop grazing. Literally, they just want to, and you can't control them. And ultimately, you let them go. And this is what's interesting. You let the cattle go, and they literally are walking fast. They're walking away from the storm. But the storm is coming fast. At some point, the cattle will start literally galloping, running away from the storm. Here's the problem. They can never outrun the storm. So soon the storm catches up with them. And they're still running. So now what's happening is that they're running with the storm, elongating the time they spend in the pain of the storm. Isn't that the story of your life? The pain you are trying to run away from ends up being the pain that you are running with. Here's a classical example. Almost every leader has got a person they should have fired a long time ago. You got that person, but you don't want to go through the pain. It's just too much of a schlep. So you keep saying, nah, I'll deal with it later. I need to be in the right firm. I have to deal with the CCMA and all the stuff. So what do? You keep postponing dealing with the non-performance of this individual. You are avoiding the pain of dealing with them. But what you don't realize is that you are living with the pain. Because as soon as you get home, your spouse asks you, so how's John doing? Then you get to your golf course. So how's John going? Then you get to your church. How's John doing? Everybody in your life knows about the problematic employee that you refuse to deal with. In fact, all you have succeeded in doing is living with the pain. But here's the lesson that I learned from buffalo. Oh, the buffalo. See, the buffalo's smart. What the buffalo would do is that when the buffalo senses a storm, number one, they know they can never, they can't avoid the storm. Number two, they can never outrun the storm. So you know what they do? They turn around and they face their storms and they start to run literally towards the storm. So the storm is coming, the buffalo are coming, and when they meet, limiting the time they spend in the pain of the storm. And so, my fellow leaders, I'm going to close on this point. Are you a cow or a buffalo? I thank you.